The high-end residential area of Brookline in Boston was enveloped in an early dusk on a November afternoon as winter's chill began to set in. The Washington mansion was adorned with seasonal decorations under Martha Washington's direction, giving it an even more festive atmosphere than usual. "Caroline, could you place this in the center of the table?" Martha's voice was soft yet commanding. Martha Washington was an influential figure in Boston society. Originally from a prominent New York family, she had become a central figure in local charitable organizations and cultural activities through her connections and talents after marrying into Boston society. "Yes, Mother," Caroline quietly replied, taking the vase her mother handed her. She always played the role of the obedient daughter in this house. Despite her success as an architect and being one of Boston's most notable young designers, her confidence vanished in front of her family. Vanessa called again. "She says she'll come right over after dinner with James." Martha's voice softened as soon as she mentioned her second daughter's name. "She's grown into such a beauty. The engagement to the Harrison family has exceeded our expectations." Caroline just nodded silently. Vanessa had been her mother's favorite from birth. Raised to be a cultured lady, she had graduated from prestigious Boston University and worked at a local art gallery. Last month, she had announced her engagement to James, the only son of Boston real estate mogul Robert Harrison. "Why don't you get your life together?" Martha suddenly said. "You're not getting any younger." "I'm satisfied with my life, Mother," Caroline replied calmly. "My architectural firm is doing well." "I'm not talking about work," Martha narrowed her eyes. "It's been 5 years since your divorce, and you're still not seeing anyone. Vanessa is already engaged to a wonderful man." Caroline took a deep breath. Her marriage 10 years ago and the divorce just 3 years later remained painful memories. Her husband Michael's betrayal had left a deep wound, making her cautious about romantic relationships since then. But for her mother, her daughter's divorce was simply a failure that had damaged the family's reputation. "Mother, I like my life as it is. I want to move at my own pace. Do you have any idea how much shame you've caused me?" Martha's voice turned sharp. "Why can't you be happy in a normal way, like Vanessa?" Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Vanessa's cheerful voice echoed through the hallway. "I'm home. I have wonderful news." Vanessa entered the room like a ray of spring sunshine. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and her expensive designer dress accentuated her youth and beauty. She went straight to her mother and kissed her on both cheeks. "James's father wants to host our engagement party at their summer house. It's the most beautiful place in Brookline." Martha's face lit up. "How wonderful. Robert Harrison is truly generous." When Vanessa noticed Caroline, she waved casually. "Oh, Caroline. You're here. Will you be able to come to the party?" There was a tone in her voice that made it doubtful whether she truly wanted her sister to attend. "Of course," Caroline smiled. "I wouldn't miss my sister's engagement party." "Really?" Surprise mixed in Vanessa's voice. "But I thought you said you disliked social gatherings." "For family," Caroline answered quietly. Martha placed her hand on Vanessa's shoulder and said, "This is your day, Vanessa. Everything will be perfect." Then she turned to Caroline and added, "You should keep a low profile. Don't damage the family's reputation this time." Caroline nodded silently. The Harrison estate was one of the most historic mansions in Brookline. The white building, constructed in the early 19th century, was surrounded by extensive gardens with an elegant pool of blue water at its center. On the day of the engagement party, the entire property was decorated with flowers and lights, filled with prominent figures from Boston society. Caroline stood alone at the edge of the venue. She wore a carefully chosen navy blue dress but had deliberately avoided flashy accessories, honoring her mother's instruction to keep a low profile. From a distance, she watched Vanessa and James greeting guests. Her sister looked radiantly beautiful, and James was a handsome young man. They certainly made a picture-perfect couple. "You must be Caroline Washington?" She turned toward the warm, deep voice and found a gentleman in his mid-60s standing there. His expression blended intelligence with friendliness. "Yes, I am," Caroline answered, a bit nervously. I'm Robert Harrison, the man smiled, extending his hand. We just spoke on the phone, and I'm delighted to meet you in person. Caroline took his hand. Thank you for inviting me. Not at all. Your design for the waterfront complex was magnificent. Those refined lines and use of space are masterpieces of modern architecture. Robert's eyes shone with genuine respect. Their conversation naturally shifted to architecture, and Caroline gradually began to relax. Robert showed a genuine understanding and appreciation of her work, and she realized how long she had been hungry for someone to talk to about her professional passion. Their conversation began to attract attention from others nearby. Dad, there you are. Vanessa's voice interrupted their conversation. She was approaching with James. Her smile was perfect, but Caroline could see confusion in her sister's eyes. Vanessa. I was just enjoying a wonderful conversation with your sister, Robert replied warmly. Her architectural sense is truly remarkable. We need her talent for our new project. James looked at Caroline for the first time. His gaze held genuine curiosity. Caroline, it's nice to meet you. I've heard about your work from my father. Nice to meet you, James, Caroline smiled. Congratulations on your engagement to my sister. Thank you, he replied sincerely. His eyes reflected surprise at finding a person who differed from the problematic sister image he had been told about by the family. Vanessa pouted with displeasure. Caroline, Mother is looking for you. She says she needs your help with something. I see, Caroline nodded calmly. Excuse me. As she walked away, Robert Harrison's gaze followed her. She's truly talented. I wonder why we haven't met sooner. Hearing those words, a momentary shadow of anxiety crossed Vanessa's face. Meanwhile, when Caroline found her mother, Martha was standing on the terrace with an obviously displeased expression. What were you doing? Martha's voice was low and angry. Monopolizing Robert Harrison. We were just talking about architecture, Caroline answered quietly. He initiated it. Today is Vanessa's day, Martha gritted her teeth. You always try to get attention. You've always been like that. Caroline swallowed her words. She knew arguing would be pointless. In any situation, she had always been cast as the villain. It had been that way since childhood. It was a mistake to come to the party, Caroline finally said. Yes, Martha coldly replied. But you can't leave now. Think about what people would say. Caroline sighed. For her mother, appearances were always the top priority. She nodded silently and returned to the crowd. As the party progressed, Caroline found herself in conversations with more and more of the Harrison family's relatives and friends. Through Robert's introductions, she met key figures in the architectural industry, all of whom expressed admiration for her work. She wasn't used to having her talent recognized in such settings. Meanwhile, Martha and Vanessa stood in a corner, watching Caroline with dissatisfaction. Look, Mother. Everyone's flocking around her, Vanessa's voice was tinged with jealousy. I'm supposed to be the center of attention today. Don't worry, my darling, Martha lightly squeezed her daughter's shoulder. People are just being polite to her. Everyone knows you're the true jewel of the Washington family. Despite those words, a shadow of anxiety appeared in Martha's eyes. Watching Caroline interact naturally with the people around her, she seemed to see something in her daughter that she herself lacked. It made her uneasy. I wonder if they remember she's divorced, Martha suddenly said. I wonder if it's safe to be close to someone with such a shameful past. Vanessa understood the implication and nodded. The two of them joined the crowd and began subtly mentioning Caroline's past. She was really unfortunate. Betrayed by her husband, she still hasn't recovered from such a dramatic divorce. Contrary to their intentions, the Harrison family didn't seem to mind. Rather, they continued to show more interest in Caroline's talent and current success. James, in particular, began to take an unexpected interest in his fiancée's sister. Throughout the party, he found opportunities to talk with Caroline multiple times, not hiding his attraction to her intelligence and kindness. You're so different from Vanessa, James said quietly to her in a secluded corner. But in a good way. Caroline couldn't hide her confusion. James, Vanessa is truly a lovely girl. Of course, he quickly replied. It's just refreshing to talk to someone with depth like you. At that moment, Vanessa found them. Her eyes flashed dangerously. She immediately sought out her mother and whispered something to her. Martha's expression darkened. It's time for speeches, Martha announced loudly. Everyone, please gather in the center. Caroline joined the circle with anxiety in her chest. In the center of the venue, champagne glasses were stacked in a pyramid, with a microphone stand beside them. The lighting dimmed slightly as Robert Harrison took his place at the microphone. His presence instantly commanded the room's atmosphere. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight, he began with a warm smile. I am truly delighted to welcome so many friends and family to celebrate the engagement of my son James and the beautiful Vanessa. As applause erupted, James and Vanessa stood beside him. Vanessa displayed a perfect smile while leaning against James's arm. However, Caroline could see the anxiety and impatience in her sister's eyes. When James first told me about Vanessa, I saw true love in my son's eyes, Robert continued. And today, before all of you, I'd like to officially celebrate the beginning of these two young people's new life together. He raised his glass and proposed a toast to James and Vanessa's happy future. As people raised their voices with the cheers, Vanessa suddenly reached for the microphone. Her movement reflected a firm determination for what was about to happen. Please let me say a few words too. Her voice was sweet but contained a strange tension. Today is the happiest day of my life. Thank you so much for welcoming me into your wonderful family, Robert. The atmosphere was pleasant. But Caroline felt a chill run down her spine. She looked for her mother and found Martha watching Vanessa with a satisfied smile and expectant eyes. I have a wonderful mother and... Vanessa paused for a moment, then continued. And a sister. Everyone, let me introduce my sister, Caroline. Suddenly, all eyes turned to Caroline. She tried to hide her agitation with a smile, but she was certain something was about to happen. Caroline has been successful as an architect, and Mother is always proud of her, but... Vanessa drew out her words, displaying a meaningful smile. There's something about her that you all don't know. The room fell silent. James's expression clouded, and he tried to gently grasp Vanessa's arm, but she had already stepped forward. She's secondhand and already broken. Anyone want to take her off my hands? Vanessa suddenly shouted with a shrill laugh. For a moment, the venue was wrapped in complete silence. Everyone held their breath, trying to understand the meaning of those words. Caroline felt her face grow hot. She had never imagined her past failed marriage would be exposed in such a way. The silence was broken by Martha's laughter. It was a laugh of triumph, as if she had found something. Please, someone take her. No returns allowed. Martha continued Vanessa's words. Her voice contained years of disappointment and mockery toward her daughter. Following Martha's laughter, uneasy laughter gradually spread through the room. But it wasn't genuine laughter, rather, it was a reaction trying to hide discomfort and confusion. Caroline felt the blood drain from her entire body. Her vision narrowed, and she could only see the exit from the room. She tried to quietly leave. Leaving with her pride intact was the only dignity she had left. As she stood up, James suddenly grabbed the microphone. This may be intended as a joke, but I don't find it amusing at all, his voice was cold. His father Robert also showed clear displeasure, standing up. But Caroline wasn't listening anymore. She began walking toward the glass door at the edge of the venue, which opened onto the terrace. The cool air of the terrace caressed her face as she took a deep breath. Under the starry night sky, the pool's surface rippled gently. Caroline closed her eyes and remembered the many humiliations she had endured throughout her life. Since childhood, she had always been treated as the insufficient daughter, forced to live in Vanessa's shadow. And tonight, the greatest humiliation of her life had been performed in front of everyone. She heard hurried footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Martha coming after her. Her mother's eyes held emotions different from usual, anger, fear, and something like urgency. Caroline, where are you going? Martha's voice was sharp. The party isn't over yet. That's enough, Mother, Caroline answered quietly. Her voice trembled but was full of determination. I don't intend to play along with you and Vanessa's games for the rest of my life. Games? Martha raised her voice. You're the one who has always caused us trouble. What about that divorce? Do you have any idea how much shame you caused me? Caroline silently stared at her mother. For the first time, she felt no power in her mother's words. They could no longer hurt her. She quietly turned her back and began walking toward the other side of the pool. Don't you dare ignore me. Martha's voice turned shrill. You've always been like this. A daughter who doesn't listen, who doesn't try to understand what I say. Caroline didn't look back. She had decided never to look back again. At that moment, she suddenly felt a strong push from behind and lost her balance. For a split second, she couldn't comprehend that she was falling. The next moment, cold water enveloped her. Caroline fell into the pool, feeling her dress grow heavy as it absorbed water. She desperately surfaced and gasped for air. She could hear gasps and shocked voices from around her. Several guests who had been on the terrace had witnessed her being pushed. When she raised her face from the water, Martha was looking down at her. Her mother's face showed a terrible satisfaction, but at the same time, fear of what she had just done. Caroline. She heard a strong male voice and saw James rushing to the poolside. His eyes showed genuine concern. Behind him followed Robert and other guests. Everyone's faces reflected surprise and sympathy. James knelt by the pool and extended his hand to Caroline. Are you all right? She hesitated for a moment. She hadn't been accustomed to accepting help from anyone for a long time. Especially in front of family, she couldn't show weakness. But there was no deception in his gaze. She slowly reached out and took his hand. As she emerged from the water, her dress was completely soaked, and her hair clung to her face. Her face was flushed with humiliation and embarrassment, but at the same time, a new light shone in her eyes. This was the last humiliation. From this night on, her life would change. She had decided that in her heart. James took off his jacket and draped it over Caroline's shoulders. That simple kindness brought warmth to her heart. He stood between Caroline and Martha, glaring at his fiancée's mother with stern eyes. An unbelievable act, Mrs. Washington, his voice was ice cold. At the entrance to the terrace, Vanessa stood with a stunned expression. Her plan had been merely to humiliate Caroline, but she hadn't expected her mother to go this far. Caroline felt the invisible chains she had felt for so long beginning to break as she watched James standing torn between the two parties. For a long time, she had lost herself amid family expectations and criticism. But now, in this most humiliating moment, she felt a strange sense of liberation. By now, many guests had gathered at the poolside. Their faces showed surprise and confusion. The elegant engagement party at the Harrison estate had suddenly turned into a drama. With his jacket still draped over Caroline's shoulders, James turned to face Martha. His eyes held a coldness he had never shown before. Is this what my future family looks like? His voice was quiet but clear enough for everyone present to hear. A mother who treats her own daughter this way? Martha's face flushed, and she tried to make excuses. You don't understand, James. Caroline has always caused problems. Be quiet, Martha. The voice belonged to Robert Harrison. He stepped forward with dignity and stared at Martha. Your actions are shameful. To treat your own daughter this way at a party in our home. Vanessa hurriedly grabbed her father's arm. Dad, please. Mom was just joking. We always. Joking. James looked at his fiancée, his eyes showed deep disappointment. You call this a joke? Caroline watched this development with disbelief as she pulled the jacket closer with trembling hands. For a long time, she had silently accepted her family's humiliation. She had convinced herself that no one would ever stand up for her. But now, for the first time, someone was standing up for her. For a long time, I've been judging based on rumors alone, James said quietly. His gaze was directed at Caroline. But tonight, I feel like I've seen the truth for the first time. Vanessa grabbed his arm and raised her voice. What are you saying? We're engaged. Actually, James took a deep breath. I've known about Caroline for some time. For a moment, the place fell silent. Her ex-husband Michael was a friend of mine from college, he continued. I knew how unfaithful he was to Caroline, and how unfairly she was treated after the divorce. Caroline looked up in surprise. She had no idea James knew so much about her past. In fact, James hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words. The reason I approached Vanessa was because I actually wanted to meet Caroline. The blood drained from Vanessa's face. You're lying, her voice trembled. I'm not lying, James answered with a serious gaze. I saw photos of Caroline's work on your social media. I was attracted to her talent and curious about her character. But from your posts, it seemed she was estranged from the family. So I thought I could get closer to her through you. Martha opened her mouth but couldn't find words. She could only watch as her perfect plan, her dream of her daughter marrying into a prominent family, crumbled before her eyes. Of course, Vanessa, I did come to like you too, James added in a slightly softer tone. But after tonight's events, I've made my decision. He took Vanessa's hand and gently removed the engagement ring. I cannot be with someone who doesn't understand true dignity. Vanessa broke down in tears. Martha tried to embrace her daughter, but Vanessa violently pushed her mother away. This is your fault, she cried. You encouraged me to make fun of Caroline. The guests watched this family drama with expressions mixing discomfort and sympathy. Gradually, people began to distance themselves from Martha and Vanessa. The reputation the Washington family had built in society over the years was about to crumble in a single night. Robert cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll conclude tonight's gathering here. Our staff will assist you as you leave. He approached Caroline and quietly said, Caroline, let's get you some dry clothes and a warm drink. And there are things I'd like to discuss with you. Caroline nodded gratefully. She stood there in her wet dress, unable to imagine what would happen next. James stood by her side and asked, May I see you home, if that's not too forward? Caroline hesitated for a moment. He was her sister's former fiancé. The situation was too complicated. Thank you, but... I understand, James smiled. I just wanted to express my respect for your talent and strength. Perhaps we could meet again someday. He handed her a piece of paper with his phone number written on it. Hours later, Caroline had returned to her apartment. After taking a warm shower and changing into dry clothes, she sat by the window, gazing at the city lights. Her phone rang, displaying an unknown number. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. Caroline, this is Robert Harrison, a calm voice said. Could we meet at my office tomorrow? I have a project I'd very much like to entrust to you. She quietly replied, Yes, I'd be delighted. After hanging up, she took a deep breath. For the first time in her life, she felt the possibility of being valued solely for her talent, completely free from her family's influence. Tonight's humiliating event might become her final liberation from her past. She compared the business card Robert had given her with the phone number James had written down. 1 year later, Caroline was preparing for her final presentation in an office overlooking Boston's skyscrapers. A model of the complex facility named Harrison Complex sat on a large table. This was the biggest project of her career as an architect, and also a symbol of the new life that had begun on the night of that engagement party. Excellent work, Caroline. Turning around, she saw Robert Harrison standing there with a smile. Over the past year, he had become a good mentor and friend to her. Thank you, Robert, she answered with a genuine smile. I couldn't have come this far without your trust. No, this is all the result of your talent, he said, examining the details of the model. All I did was give you an opportunity. Caroline gazed at the Boston landscape spreading outside the window. Her life had changed unbelievably in the past year. Her design firm, Washington Designs, supported by Robert, had grown rapidly, and her name had become known as one of the most innovative architects in the industry. And her relationship with James had gradually deepened. 2 weeks after the night of the engagement party, he had contacted her. Starting with talk about work, they eventually nurtured a friendship, and little by little, developed feelings beyond that. James enveloped her with a warm affection that seemed to fill the lack of family she had felt for years. Meanwhile, Martha and Vanessa's lives had taken a sharp downturn. A video of the incident at the engagement party spread throughout society, and they found themselves distanced by their former friends. Vanessa hastily got engaged to another wealthy man, but the engagement was quickly broken off after the man's family saw the video from the party. Martha was removed from the charity events she had hosted for years, and the social status she had built up crumbled. And 3 months ago, unexpected visitors came to Caroline's office. Martha and Vanessa were facing financial difficulties. Vanessa was on the verge of losing her family home, and Martha's medical bills were piling up due to health issues. "We need help," Martha was obviously having difficulty saying it. However, there was no sign of apology in her words. Caroline responded calmly. "Real family means supporting and respecting each other, Mother," she said quietly. "You were the one who called me the family's shame." Martha showed tears for the first time. Years of cultivated arrogance crumbled away, and there stood just a hurt, elderly mother. "Caroline, I was wrong," she finally admitted. "I didn't see your value. I want you to forgive me." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was the best Martha could do. Caroline offered her financial support, but with conditions. Vanessa would work as an intern at her company, and Martha would receive psychological counseling. Robert's cough brought Caroline back to reality. "Everyone's gathered," he said gently. "Are you ready?" Caroline nodded. Today was the unveiling of her project, and key industry figures had gathered. And her family too. Entering the conference room, she found James waiting. The affectionate smile on his face gave her courage. In a corner of the room sat Martha and Vanessa with slightly anxious expressions. Through her internship at the company, Vanessa had begun to change little by little. For the first time, she was learning the value of working hard to achieve something. After the presentation's great success, James took Caroline aside. "Caroline," he said nervously. "I want to make today special." He took a small box from his pocket and knelt before her. "Will you share your life with me?" Caroline was speechless. She couldn't have imagined that her life would take such a happy turn from that humiliating moment a year ago when she was pushed into the pool. "Yes," she answered with tears in her eyes. Seeing the two embrace, Martha began to dream of holding grandchildren. She was finally beginning to understand the true value of family. Vanessa still watched the couple with a complex expression, but a feeling of genuinely acknowledging her sister's success was also growing within her. Caroline and James's small wedding was held on a warm spring day. Caroline invited Martha and Vanessa, but with conditions, proof of a genuine apology and change. Martha was able to convey words of heartfelt apology to her daughter for the first time. Vanessa hadn't yet reached the point of honestly acknowledging her mistakes, but she had begun making efforts to respect her sister's new life. On the wedding day, Caroline exchanged vows with a happiness-filled smile. Around her were people who truly loved and respected her. That was the form of true family she had sought for years. The journey that began on that humiliating night of the engagement party had led her to unexpected happiness. Sometimes, life's greatest shame can open the door to the greatest liberation. Caroline had learned this firsthand.